Chapter 1. Emma. The smell of cinnamon and fresh coffee filled the kitchen as I flipped the last pancake onto the growing stack. I smiled, adjusting my silk robe as I moved around the kitchen, humming softly. It was early, the city outside still waking up, but this was my favorite time of the day, because it was our time. I heard the sound of small feet padding across the floor before tiny arms wrapped around my waist. "Morning, Mommy," Ethan mumbled sleepily, his face pressed against my stomach. I melted instantly. "Good morning, sweetheart." I turned around, kneeling to his level, smoothing his messy brown hair back. "Did you sleep well?" Ethan nodded, yawning. "Yeah, the baby kicked a lot last night, though." I chuckled, placing a hand over my round belly. "She's a night owl, just like her daddy." Ethan's sleepy eyes widened. "I thought I was like Daddy?" "You both are," I teased, kissing his forehead. "But your sister? She's on a whole new level." Ethan grinned before sniffing the air dramatically. "Is that pancakes?" I ruffled his hair. "Go sit down. Breakfast is almost ready." As he climbed onto his seat, I heard the slow, familiar steps of him, Liam Sinclair, the love of my life, the man who had turned my world upside down in the best way possible. I turned just as he walked in, still shirtless, his sweatpants hanging low on his hips, his hair messily tousled from sleep. And, Lord help me, he was holding our newborn daughter in his arms. If my heart wasn't already his, I swear I would have fallen all over again. "Morning, beautiful," Liam murmured, walking straight toward me, kissing my forehead. I leaned into his warmth. "Morning." He shifted our tiny daughter in his arms, adjusting her blanket. Someone decided she didn't want to sleep anymore. I reached out, stroking the soft curls on her tiny head. "Daddy's little girl," Liam smirked. "And what about me? Where's my love this morning?" I raised an eyebrow. "Your pancakes are on the table." Liam chuckled, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Not exactly the sweetness I was hoping for, Mrs. Sinclair." Heat crept up my cheeks as I swatted his arm. Ethan made a face. "Are you guys flirting again?" Liam grinned, sitting down at the table with our baby still nestled in his arms. "Of course, it's how I remind your mom that she's the most beautiful woman in the world." I rolled my eyes playfully, but felt my heart squeeze. Even after everything, after years of love, 2 children, and a lifetime of chaos, Liam still looked at me like I was his everything. There was nothing better than this. The smell of breakfast, the laughter of my son, the warmth of my wife standing beside me. And now, our daughter Sophia, resting peacefully in my arms. This was everything I never knew I needed. Emma placed my plate in front of me, homemade pancakes, crispy bacon, and eggs, exactly how I liked it. I smirked. "You spoil me, sweetheart." She kissed my cheek, her lips soft. "Of course, you're my husband." The word still hit me in the chest every time. Husband, mine. I didn't waste a second before pulling her into my lap, ignoring her soft squeal of protest. "Liam, the food." "Can wait," I murmured, pressing a slow kiss to her neck. Ethan made a face. "Ugh, why do you guys always do that?" Emma laughed, wiggling free, but not before sneaking a bite. I narrowed my eyes playfully. "You really want to start a war this early?" She smirked. "Bring it on, Sinclair." God, I loved this woman. The rest of the morning was perfectly chaotic. Ethan spilled syrup on his shirt. Liam ended up feeding Sophia while simultaneously stealing more of my food. And me? I just sat there, soaking in the warmth of my family. This was what I had always dreamed of. A home filled with love, a husband who adored me, children who made every moment worth it. As I watched Liam tickle Ethan, their laughter filling the air, I placed a hand over my belly, feeling the familiar flutter of movement. More love, more family, more forever. And for the first time in my life, I had no more fears, no more doubts, because I was exactly where I was meant to be. With them. With him. Forever. Chapter 2. If someone had told me a few years ago that I would be married to Liam Sinclair, billionaire CEO, bringing him homemade lunch to his high-rise office, I would have laughed in their face. Yet here I was, stepping out of my car with a neatly packed homemade meal, still warm, in my hands. Sophia was asleep in her car seat, safely with the driver, and Ethan was at school. It was just me and my husband. And today, I was going to surprise him. I walked into the towering Sinclair Enterprises building, smiling at the familiar receptionist, Diana, who had been working here for years. "Mrs. Sinclair," she greeted warmly. "Lovely to see you." I still wasn't used to being called that. I smiled back. "I thought I'd bring my husband lunch today." "Do you think he'd mind?" Diana chuckled. "Oh, he definitely won't mind. In fact, you might just make his entire week." I laughed softly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Let's hope so. I was in the middle of a tense boardroom meeting when I heard a light knock on the door. My executive assistant, Greg, leaned in. Sir, your wife is here. For a moment, my brain completely shut down. Emma? Here? The room went silent as I processed that information. Then, without thinking twice, I stood. Meeting's over. The executives blinked in confusion. Sir, we haven't finished discussing the quarterly. I don't care, I said flatly, already walking toward the door. I have something more important to deal with. They all exchanged glances, but no one dared argue, because nothing was more important than Emma. The elevator doors slid open, and there he was. Liam Sinclair, tall, powerful, breathtaking in his tailored suit, his blue eyes locked onto mine like I was the only thing that mattered. My heart fluttered. His entire demeanor shifted. His usual businesslike intensity softened into something only I got to see. Sweetheart, he murmured, striding toward me. What are you doing here? I held up the neatly wrapped lunchbox with a shy smile. I thought you might be hungry. For a moment, Liam just stared at me. Then, to my utter shock, he laughed. A real, deep, genuine laugh. Of course you did, he said, shaking his head with pure adoration in his eyes. Before I could say another word, he pulled me into his arms, right there in the middle of his office lobby in front of everyone. I let out a soft gasp, but he didn't care. He kissed me, slow and deep, his lips lingering on mine like he had been starving all day. My knees went weak. By the time he pulled back, I was breathless. Did you cook it yourself? He asked, taking the lunchbox from my hands. I smirked. Of course, Liam exhaled, shaking his head in awe. You are a dream of a woman. I had never been jealous of another man. Until today. Because as I sat in my office opening the lunch Emma had brought me, tender grilled steak, perfectly seasoned mashed potatoes, homemade biscuits, and a side of roasted vegetables, I realized something. I felt sorry for every man who didn't have what I had. Holy shit, I muttered as I took the first bite. Emma giggled. Good? I shot her a look. Sweetheart, I might just fire my private chef. This is better than anything I've ever eaten in my life. She flushed slightly, looking pleased. Good, I like knowing my husband is eating something made with love. I smirked. Love and magic, apparently. Emma rolled her eyes, but I could see the warmth in them. Then, of course, Greg ruined the moment. Sir, He stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide as he saw what I was eating. I arched an eyebrow. Yes, Greg? He blinked. You're eating homemade food? I narrowed my eyes. You sound shocked. Greg hesitated. Well, it's just that in the 7 years I've worked here, you've never eaten anything that wasn't catered from a 5-star restaurant. Emma chuckled beside me, clearly enjoying this. I took another deliberate bite, making sure to let out a satisfied groan. Greg looked downright offended. Sir, this isn't fair, I smirked. What isn't? Greg gestured to my meal. We're stuck with dry office sandwiches, and you're over here eating something that looks like it belongs in a Michelin-star restaurant. Emma burst out laughing. Oh, come on, Greg. I can bring you lunch sometime, too. Greg's eyes lit up. Liam Sinclair did not share. I put my arm around Emma's waist, pulling her close. No, she won't. Greg threw up his hands. See? Selfish. Emma giggled, and I pressed a kiss to her temple. Damn right, I was selfish. She was mine. Liam devoured every bite of his meal, and I soaked in every second of it. Watching him enjoy something I made, seeing the happiness on his face, it made my heart swell. When he was finished, he leaned back in his chair, completely satisfied. Sweetheart, he said, his voice low and warm, I love you every day. But today I might just buy you another island. I laughed. I don't need an island, Liam. He tilted his head. Then what do you need? I smiled softly, reaching for his hand. This, I whispered. Just this. You, me, and the life we've built. Liam's expression changed. Softer. Warmer. Completely in love. Then, with no hesitation, he stood, pulling me into his arms, and kissed me, slow and deep, like he wanted to memorize me all over again. I melted against him, feeling safe, loved, cherished. By the time he pulled away, he was smirking. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, he murmured, his lips brushing against mine. I grinned. Then you should probably stop kissing me. Liam's grip tightened. Not a chance. And with that, he kissed me again. Because when it came to us, love was served every single day. Chapter 3. I had started something I could never take back. Bringing Liam lunch was meant to be a one-time surprise, but after seeing the way his eyes lit up and how he devoured every bite like it was the best meal of his life, I knew I was in trouble. because now he expected it. And honestly, I loved it. So here I was again, walking into Sinclair Enterprises with another homemade meal, feeling entirely too pleased with myself. The receptionist, Diana, smirked at me. He's already cleared his schedule for the next hour. I laughed. He's ridiculous. You love it, she teased. I did. But what I didn't expect was Greg standing there looking at my lunch bag like it held the secrets of the universe. Mrs. Sinclair, he greeted. Tell me, is that homemade steak pasta with garlic bread? I finished, smirking. Greg groaned dramatically. Oh, come on, the man has everything. Money, power, and now he gets this too? I laughed, shaking my head. Would it help if I brought you lunch one day too? I swear, Greg's soul left his body. Would it help? He gasped. Mrs. Sinclair, if you did that, I might actually sell my soul to you, I giggled, completely amused. Okay, I teased. Tomorrow, I'll bring you lunch too. Greg stumbled back like I had just proposed to him. I need to sit down, he muttered. I rolled my eyes playfully and walked past him. I had a husband to feed. I felt her before I saw her. The moment Emma stepped into my office, it was like the air changed. I looked up from my desk, and there she was, holding a brown paper bag that smelled like heaven. I smirked. My beautiful wife, here to ruin me again? She laughed. If by ruin you mean feed, then yes. I stood crossing the room in seconds before pulling her into a slow, sweet kiss. When I pulled away, I whispered, You know I love you, right? She raised an eyebrow. Because I bring you lunch? I smirked. Partially. Emma rolled her eyes, but I saw the warmth in them. She handed me the food, and I took one bite, then groaned. Sweetheart, I said between bites. Are you trying to make me gain weight? She laughed. You can afford it, I smirked. I love it when you flirt with me. She swatted my arm playfully. But then, Greg walked in, and the moment he saw my lunch, he froze. Oh my God, Greg whispered. She did it. She actually made me lunch. Emma giggled. I keep my promises. Greg looked at the food like it was a holy artifact. Then he took a bite. And I swear, he made a sound no grown man should ever make. Oh my God, Greg practically moaned. Mrs. Sinclair, this is unfair. Emma giggled, completely amused. Greg turned to me, dead serious. Sir, I'm quitting. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Greg pointed at Emma. I'm quitting and moving into your house. I will wash dishes. I will mow the lawn. I will adopt your children. Whatever it takes for me to eat like this every day. Emma burst out laughing. I just glared. Greg, I said darkly, wrapping an arm around my wife. Yes, sir? I smirked. If you don't back away from my wife's cooking, I will fire you. Greg sighed dramatically. Understood, but the second Emma wasn't looking, Greg mouthed, I love you at her food. I almost threw my fork at him. The next day when I brought lunch again, Greg was waiting. And before I could even hand Liam his food, Greg made his move. He threw down a contract on Liam's desk. Liam raised an eyebrow. What's this? Greg crossed his arms. A petition to be invited to dinner at your house at least once a month. Liam stared. You're joking. Greg lifted his chin. Sir, I have never been more serious in my life. Emma laughed so hard she almost dropped the food. Liam just looked at me. I shrugged. He did say he'd sell his soul for my cooking. Greg nodded vigorously. Liam sighed, dragging a hand down his face. Then he smirked. Fine. Greg froze. Fine? Liam leaned back. You can come to dinner. Once. Greg looked genuinely emotional. He placed a hand over his heart. Sir, this is the greatest moment of my life, Liam smirked. And the worst moment of mine. Emma just laughed and kissed Liam's cheek. Because at the end of the day, love in this family was served with warmth, laughter, and just the right amount of chaos. Chapter 4. It was official. Greg had somehow wormed his way into our lives. I had expected him to beg for another meal at some point, but I didn't expect him to actually show up at our house uninvited. And yet, here he was, standing at my front door, holding a bouquet of flowers. Mrs. Sinclair, Greg greeted dramatically. Thank you for having me in your humble abode. I blinked. Greg, who let you in? Before he could answer, Liam appeared behind me, arms crossed, looking utterly unamused. I did not invite him, Liam muttered. Greg grinned. I invited myself. Liam narrowed his eyes. How did you get past security? Greg shrugged. I told them I was family, I snorted. And they believed you? Greg smirked. I said I was the forgotten Sinclair son. Liam groaned. Emma, do not feed him. If you do, he'll never leave, Greg gasped. You wound me, sir, I giggled. Oh, come on, Liam. He just wants dinner, Greg nodded enthusiastically. Exactly, and companionship. And maybe an official spot in your family will. But mostly dinner. Liam pinched the bridge of his nose. I knew this was a mistake. I stepped aside, waving Greg in. You're already here. Might as well eat. Greg whooped. Liam? He just sighed, mumbling something about finding new security guards. I had lost the battle. Greg was sitting at my dinner table, eating my wife's food and bonding with my children. And worst of all, they actually liked him. Ethan giggled. Greg, you're funny. Greg grinned. I know, Sophia gurgled happily, waving her chubby little hands at him. Emma smiled warmly. You're great with them. Greg placed a hand over his heart. Emma, please, if I had a single maternal bone in my body, I'd be adopting children left and right. I stabbed my fork into my steak aggressively. Emma giggled at my reaction. Liam, be nice. Greg smirked. Yeah, Liam, be nice. I glared. You're in my house, eating my food, sitting at my table. Why would I be nice? Greg leaned back, looking completely at ease. Because deep down, you love me, I scoffed. Deep down, I am plotting your demise. Emma laughed, but I wasn't joking. Greg was getting too comfortable. And if I wasn't careful, he was never going to leave. I should have known Liam would try to kick Greg out immediately after dinner. But Greg had other plans. He settled onto the couch like he belonged here, arms stretched across the cushions, sighing in pure contentment. Ah, he hummed. This is nice. Liam glared. Greg tilted his head. Yes, big brother? Liam clenched his jaw. You are not family. Greg placed a hand over his heart. But I could be, Liam groaned. I giggled, leaning into Liam's side. You might as well just accept it, babe. He's part of the family now. Liam turned to me, horrified. Don't encourage him, Greg beamed. Encourage me, Emma. You're the only one who truly understands my worth, Liam scowled. She is not encouraging you, Greg smirked. If you ever divorce him, can I marry into the family? Liam stood up immediately. Greg shot off the couch, laughing hysterically. I'm joking, sir. Please don't kill me. Emma collapsed into giggles, and just like that, Greg was unofficially adopted into the Sinclair family, whether Liam liked it or not. Emma was too soft. Greg had officially convinced her to let him stay for family movie night, which meant I had lost. And worst of all, Ethan was bonding with him. You don't have a wife, Greg? Ethan asked curiously. Greg sighed dramatically. No, little one. My heart remains tragically unclaimed. Emma snorted. Maybe if you stopped flirting with my husband, you'd have better luck, Greg gasped. Emma, I would never, Liam smirked. You literally tried to take my place at dinner. Greg shrugged. Okay, fair point, Ethan giggled. Maybe you can marry Aunt Sarah, I blinked. Who? Emma's face paled. Ethan, she hissed. We talked about not bringing up Aunt Sarah. Greg's eyes lit up. Wait, who's Aunt Sarah? Emma shook her head. No one, Greg grinned. Emma sighed. My cousin, she admitted. She's a lot, Greg smirked. And is she single? Emma raised an eyebrow. Are you actually interested? Greg sat up straight. Emma, I would date a troll if it meant I got invited to these family dinners regularly. I groaned. Absolutely not. Emma laughed. Let's see if Sarah survives meeting you first. Greg grinned. Challenge accepted. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. This was my life now. A wife I adored, children I worshipped, and an unofficially adopted idiot who was never leaving. And honestly, maybe I didn't mind it. Too much. Chapter 5. Cooking dinner had always been something I loved. It wasn't just about the food. It was about the warmth, the love, the laughter that came with it. And tonight my kitchen was filled with all of those things. The smell of rosemary chicken, mashed potatoes, and freshly baked bread filled the air as I stirred the creamy sauce on the stove. Sophia was nestled in her baby seat nearby, cooing softly, while Ethan sat on the counter, munching on a carrot stick. And Liam was being completely useless. Sweetheart, he murmured, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. I sighed, trying to focus on the sauce. Liam, he nuzzled my neck. I bit back a smile. I'm cooking. So? He pressed a slow kiss to my shoulder. You're my wife. That means I get unlimited access. I laughed. That is not what that means, Ethan groaned. Are you guys flirting again? Liam smirked. Yes, son. It's how I remind your mother that she married the best man alive. Ethan made a fake gagging noise. Dad, stop. I giggled, elbowing Liam playfully. Go set the table. He sighed dramatically, pressing one last kiss to my cheek. Fine, but only because I love you. Ethan rolled his eyes. Dad, you say that all the time. Liam grinned. Because it's true. I just shook my head, completely in love with this man. Dinner at the Sinclair house had become something I never expected. It was loud, warm, filled with laughter and love, and of course, Greg was here. Again. The man had somehow officially earned himself an invite to dinner twice a week, and worst of all, Emma actually encouraged it. Greg took one bite of his mashed potatoes and groaned dramatically. "Oh my God!" He turned to Ethan. "Kid, do you understand how lucky you are?" Ethan grinned. "Yep." Greg sighed dreamily. "I need to find a woman who can cook like this. Emma, do you have any other cousins?" I glared. "No." Emma giggled. Actually, I turned to her, narrowing my eyes. "Emma." She bit her lip, amused. "Greg, meet Aunt Sarah." Greg perked up. "Aunt? Older woman? Experienced?" Emma laughed. "No, she's my age, but good luck handling her." Greg smirked. "Emma, please, if I can survive working for your husband, I can survive anything." I sighed, shaking my head. This man was never leaving. After dinner, Ethan helped me clear the plates while Liam tucked Sophia into bed. "Greg?" Greg was lounging on our couch like he paid rent. "I need a food coma nap," he declared. I laughed, wiping my hands on a towel. "You could go home, you know." Greg gasped. "And miss this cozy family atmosphere?" "Emma, please, my apartment is silent." I shook my head. "I don't know how Liam puts up with you." Greg grinned. "He loves me." "I do not," Liam's voice rumbled from behind us. Greg smirked. "That's not what you said when I saved your company from a lawsuit last month." Liam narrowed his eyes. "Greg, get out." Greg sighed, standing up dramatically. "Fine, but I'm coming back Thursday," Liam muttered. "We need a new security system." Greg laughed, clapping Liam on the back. "Love you, sir." Liam groaned. "I hate you." Greg winked at me. "Good night, Emma. You're the only Sinclair who appreciates me." I giggled. "Good night, Greg." And just like that, he was gone. I exhaled deeply, watching the front door close. "Sweetheart," Emma turned amused. I smirked. "Stop feeding him," she giggled. "But I like Greg." I narrowed my eyes. "He's infiltrating our home." She leaned up, pressing a soft kiss to my lips. "And you love it," I grumbled. "A little." She laughed, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Well, he's family now," I sighed, pulling her against me. "The things I do for you, Mrs. Sinclair," she smiled. "Dance with me?" I blinked. "Right now?" She nodded. So I turned on the record player, pulled her into my arms, and swayed with her in our warm, cozy kitchen. And for the first time that night, everything was exactly how it should be. Chapter 6. A Date with Disaster, a.k.a. Greg Meets Aunt Sarah, Emma and Liam's POV, warm romantic, and hilariously chaotic. When I introduced Greg to my cousin Sarah, I had no idea what I had just unleashed. I thought it would be cute. Greg was hilarious, Sarah was feisty. Maybe they'd hit it off. What I didn't expect? Complete and utter disaster. It started when Sarah showed up at the restaurant in a red dress that screamed, "I will eat you alive." Greg, ever the cocky flirt, smirked like he had already won. And then, within 5 minutes, they were fighting. Liam, Greg, and Sarah's date, if you could even call it that, was spectacularly crashing and burning. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my whiskey, completely entertained. Greg smirked. "So, Sarah, tell me, what's a beautiful woman like you doing single?" Sarah arched an eyebrow. "Avoiding men like you." Emma snorted into her drink. I smirked. "Sarah, be nice." Sarah tilted her head. "I am being nice. If I weren't, I'd have left already." Greg placed a hand over his heart. "Emma, why would you do this to me?" Emma laughed. "I thought you liked a challenge." Greg sighed dramatically. "Not when the challenge wants to kill me." Sarah smiled sweetly. "Oh, you're not dead yet. Give me time." Greg stared. I laughed. This was way better than I expected. After dinner, Sarah stormed out. Greg sat back in his chair looking like he had seen war. "She's a demon," he muttered. I giggled. "You love it." Greg groaned. "I love your cooking. I fear your cousin." Liam smirked. "Good. That means she did her job." Greg scoffed. "Well, I hope you two are happy. I have been emotionally wounded." I patted his arm. "You'll live." Greg sighed. "Barely." Liam chuckled. "So, second date?" Greg choked on his drink. "Emma?" Emma just laughed. After we got home, I found Ethan waiting for me in my office. He looked up, his little face serious. "Dad?" I set my briefcase down. "Yeah, buddy." Ethan hesitated. "Can we have a boys' day?" I blinked. "A boys' day?" He nodded. "Yeah, just me and you. No girls." From the kitchen, Emma gasped. I smirked, walking toward him. "And what would this boys' day include?" Ethan grinned. "Ice cream, football, and no talking about feelings." I laughed. "That sounds manageable." Ethan clapped excitedly. "Yes, can we do it this weekend?" I ruffled his hair. "Of course, buddy." And just like that, Ethan had completely won my heart all over again. Later that night, after tucking Ethan and Sophia in, I found Liam standing in the kitchen. He turned when he saw me, his expression soft. "You're beautiful," he murmured. I blushed. Liam, I'm in pajamas. He smirked. Exactly, I giggled, wrapping my arms around his neck. Ethan told me about your boys' day. Liam nodded. I think it's important. I melted. God, I love you, I whispered. He tilted his head. That's not news to me, sweetheart, I laughed. Dance with me? He smirked. Again? I nodded. So, once again, we danced in the kitchen, slow and sweet. And in that moment, I knew this was the happiest I had ever been. Chapter 6. When I introduced Greg to my cousin Sarah, I had no idea what I had just unleashed. I thought it would be cute. Greg was hilarious. Sarah was feisty. Maybe they'd hit it off. What I didn't expect, complete and utter disaster. It started when Sarah showed up at the restaurant in a red dress that screamed, I will eat you alive. Greg, ever the cocky flirt, smirked like he had already won. And then, within 5 minutes, they were fighting. Greg and Sarah's date, if you could even call it that, was spectacularly crashing and burning. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my whiskey, completely entertained. Greg smirked. So Sarah, tell me, what's a beautiful woman like you doing single? Sarah arched an eyebrow. Avoiding men like you. Emma snorted into her drink. I smirked. Sarah, be nice. Sarah tilted her head. I am being nice. If I weren't, I'd have left already. Greg placed a hand over his heart. Emma, why would you do this to me? Emma laughed. I thought you liked a challenge. Greg sighed dramatically. Not when the challenge wants to kill me. Sarah smiled sweetly. Oh, you're not dead yet. Give me time, Greg stared. I laughed. This was way better than I expected. After dinner, Sarah stormed out. Greg sat back in his chair, looking like he had seen war. She's a demon, he muttered. I giggled. You love it, Greg groaned. I love your cooking. I fear your cousin. Liam smirked. Good. That means she did her job. Greg scoffed. Well, I hope you two are happy. I have been emotionally wounded. I patted his arm. You'll live, Greg sighed. Barely. Liam chuckled. So, second date? Greg choked on his drink. Emma? Emma just laughed. After we got home, I found Ethan waiting for me in my office. He looked up, his little face serious. Dad? I set my briefcase down. Yeah, buddy? Ethan hesitated. Can we have a boys' day? I blinked. A boys' day? He nodded. Yeah, just me and you. No girls. From the kitchen, Emma gasped. I smirked, walking toward him. And what would this boys' day include? Ethan grinned. Ice cream, football, and no talking about feelings. I laughed. That sounds manageable. Ethan clapped excitedly. Yes, can we do it this weekend? I ruffled his hair. Of course, buddy. And just like that, Ethan had completely won my heart all over again. Later that night, after tucking Ethan and Sophia in, I found Liam standing in the kitchen. He turned when he saw me, his expression soft. You're beautiful, he murmured. I blushed. Liam, I'm in pajamas. He smirked. Exactly. I giggled, wrapping my arms around his neck. Ethan told me about your boys' day. Liam nodded. I think it's important. I melted. God, I love you, I whispered. He tilted his head. That's not news to me, sweetheart. I laughed. Dance with me? He smirked. Again? I nodded. So, once again, we danced in the kitchen, slow and sweet. And in that moment, I knew this was the happiest I had ever been. Chapter 7. The moment I stepped out of my bedroom, Ethan was already waiting for me, fully dressed, arms crossed, looking like a tiny version of me. Dad, he said seriously, are you ready for Boys' Day? I smirked. I don't know, buddy. Are you ready? He nodded. We have a full schedule. I arched an eyebrow. Oh? Ethan pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and unfolded it. Step 1, eat lots of pancakes. I smirked. Solid plan. Step 2, football in the park. I nodded. Good. Step 3, eat ice cream and act like grown-ups don't exist. I chuckled. Sounds dangerous, Ethan grinned. It is. Then he lowered his voice. Step 4, no girls allowed. From the kitchen, Emma gasped. Excuse me? Ethan turned, horrified. Mom, you're not supposed to hear that part. Emma walked over, hands on her hips, clearly amused. Ethan Sinclair, are you banning me from Boys' Day? Ethan looked panicked. Emma pretended to pout. I make your pancakes, you know. Ethan gasped. Oh, no. I didn't think about that. I smirked. Looks like Boys' Day is over before it even started. Ethan groaned. Fine, Mom can make breakfast, but then she has to leave. Emma laughed. Dia pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. She melted into me. Have fun today, she murmured. I smirked. I always do. Watching Liam and Ethan leave for their father-son adventure made my heart feel so full. But I had my own plan today, a romantic surprise for Liam. I spent the afternoon preparing. Candles, a home-cooked meal, a little black dress that I knew Liam would love. He spoiled me all the time. Now, it was his turn. Ethan and I had the best day. We ate way too many pancakes, played football, where he cheated constantly, and ate enough ice cream to make my personal trainer cry. But the best part? Ethan falling asleep against my chest in the car on the way home. When I carried him inside, Emma met us at the door, smiling softly. She kissed Ethan's forehead. "Good day," I nodded. "The best," she smiled. "Well, now it's your turn," I blinked. "What?" Then I noticed it. The candlelit dinner, the wine, and most of all, Emma in that damn dress. Liam didn't move. He just stared, like he wasn't sure if this was real or a dream. I smirked. "I figured you deserved a night off." His blue eyes darkened. "Sweetheart," I stepped closer, running a hand down his solid chest. "Dinner first," I whispered. He groaned. "You're evil," I giggled. "Sit, Mr. Sinclair," he smirked. "Yes, ma'am. The food? Amazing. The wine? Perfect. But the real highlight? The way she looked at me." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "You always do this," I murmured. She tilted her head. "Do what?" I squeezed her fingers. "Make me feel like the luckiest man alive." She smiled softly. "You are." I stood, pulling her into my arms, and just like always, we danced in the kitchen. Slow, soft, like we had all the time in the world, and in that moment, we did. Chapter 8. There was a certain peace in our mornings now. Not quiet, because with 2 kids, nothing was ever really quiet, but peaceful in a way that filled my heart. I was cooking breakfast, flipping pancakes while Sophia babbled in her high chair and Ethan bounced excitedly in his seat. And Liam was doing what he did best, flirting with me. "Sweetheart," he murmured, leaning against the counter with his coffee, watching me. I smirked, flipping the pancake. "Yes?" he grinned. "I think this might be the best sight in the world." I arched an eyebrow. "Me cooking?" He took a sip of his coffee, smirking. "You in my kitchen, wearing my shirt, cooking me breakfast." I laughed. "I swear, you're so spoiled." Ethan nodded aggressively. "He is, Mom," Liam chuckled. "That's right, son. Your mother is ruining me with her love," Ethan giggled. "You love it." Liam winked. "That I do." I rolled my eyes, but my heart was warm. Because this was everything. Just as we were sitting down to eat, Greg walked in, uninvited. Again. "Good morning, beautiful family," Greg announced, strolling into my home like he paid rent. I groaned. "Greg, why?" Emma giggled. "Greg, are you stalking us?" Greg sat down like he belonged here. "Emma, please, I would never stalk. I just happened to be in the neighborhood." I narrowed my eyes. "You live 20 minutes away." Greg shrugged. "Details." Ethan grinned. "Are you here for breakfast?" Greg smirked. "Depends. Did your mom cook?" Liam glared. "Don't answer that." Emma laughed, shaking her head. "Greg, you are out of control." Greg sighed dramatically. "Emma, I am starving. My soul needs nourishment." I smirked. "You know, you could just get a girlfriend who can cook." Greg paused, then scowled. "Absolutely not," Emma giggled. "Why not?" Greg folded his arms. "Because all the women I attract are crazy." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Greg, you're literally avoiding Sarah." Greg groaned. "Emma, that woman is dangerous." I smirked. "You mean she's too much for you?" Greg straightened. "Absolutely not. He hesitated. "I respect her too much to waste her time." Emma snorted. Translation: "She intimidates you." Greg sighed, grabbing a pancake off Ethan's plate. "I refuse to discuss this." I chuckled. "Which means we're definitely discussing this." Greg glared. "Liam, I will report you for workplace harassment." Emma laughed. "Oh my God, Greg." Greg smirked. "Unless you promise to make me lunch again." I growled. "Absolutely not." "Emma?" Emma just laughed like she was enjoying this too much. And honestly, maybe I was too. After breakfast, I sat in the living room watching Liam and Ethan build a fort out of pillows. Sophia was asleep, the house smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and the love in this home, it was unshakable. Liam looked up, catching me staring. He grinned. "What?" I smiled softly. "Nothing, just happy." He smirked. "Good." Then out of nowhere, he threw a pillow at me. I gasped. "Liam Sinclair, did you just start a pillow fight with me?" He smirked. "I did." I stood, narrowing my eyes. "Oh, you're done for." And just like that, a full-on family pillow fight erupted. Ethan laughed loudly, jumping into my arms. "Mom, we have to team up," I grinned. "Let's take your father down." Liam smirked. "I'd like to see you try." And for the next 20 minutes, we did nothing but laugh, throw pillows, and make memories that would last a lifetime. Because love, it was in these small, chaotic, beautiful moments, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. Later that evening, after the house was quiet and the kids were asleep, I found Emma in the kitchen, cleaning up. I walked up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. She sighed, leaning into me. "Tired?" I murmured. She nodded. A little, but good tired. I pressed a kiss to her temple. Good, she turned in my arms, smiling up at me. You're really happy, aren't you? I tilted my head. You sound surprised. She bit her lip. It's just you always had this powerful billionaire image. And now? You're a father, a husband, a man who gets into pillow fights with his children. I smirked. And? She cupped my face. And I love every version of you. Something in my chest tightened. I pulled her closer, kissing her deeply, slowly, like she was my entire world. Because she was. She pulled away, breathless. Liam, I grinned. She giggled. Dance with me? I laughed. Again, she nodded. Always. So I took her hand, twirling her around the kitchen, slow and soft, with nothing but the sound of our hearts keeping rhythm. Because with her, I could dance forever. Chapter 9. Planning a big family dinner was something I had always dreamed of. A house full of love, laughter, and way too much food. And tonight, that dream was coming true. The kitchen smelled like roasted lamb, garlic butter rolls, and creamy mashed potatoes, a mix of home, warmth, and the love I poured into every meal. Sophia was in her baby seat, babbling to herself. Ethan sat on the counter, taste-testing everything, and Liam was pretending to help. I turned to him, hands on my hips. You haven't actually done anything, he smirked, leaning against the counter, watching me. Wrong, I've admired you. That's important work, I rolled my eyes. Liam, he grinned, stepping closer. Sweetheart, you know I can't cook, I arched an eyebrow. You can at least set the table. Liam sighed dramatically. Fine, but only because I love you. Ethan giggled. Dad, you say that every day, Liam smirked. And it's always true. I just shook my head, biting back my smile. Because as much as Liam pretended to be unhelpful, he was always right beside me, making life sweeter. Greg arrived first, because of course he did. He walked in, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. Oh my God, he clutched his chest. Emma, whatever you made tonight, I already know it's life-changing. I scowled. Greg, this is a family dinner. Greg grinned. I know. That's why I'm here. I sighed. You are not family. Greg placed a hand over his heart. I am in spirit. Emma giggled. You know, Liam, I think he's right. I turned to her, horrified. Sweetheart, no, Greg smirked. Yes, I groaned. Then Sarah walked in, and everything descended into chaos. The second Sarah spotted Greg, her eyes narrowed. You, Greg smirked, leaning casually against the counter. Missed me already, sweetheart? Sarah crossed her arms. I was warned you'd be here. Greg grinned. Good, I love being a threat, I facepalmed. Liam chuckled under his breath. This is about to get interesting. I turned to him, whispering, Should we stop them? Liam smirked. Absolutely not. Greg and Sarah continued bickering while the rest of the family arrived, filling the house with warmth and chatter. And despite the chaos, the teasing, the ridiculous banter, it was perfect, because this was family, messy, loud, and absolutely full of love. Dinner was incredible. Emma had outdone herself. Tender lamb, buttery rolls, roasted vegetables, and a dessert that nearly made me propose to her all over again. I sat back, watching her, soaking her in. She was laughing with Ethan, helping Sophia with tiny bites of mashed potatoes, completely in her element. I had never seen anything more beautiful. Greg leaned over. Hey, boss. I gritted my teeth. Greg, do not ruin this moment. Greg grinned. Too late. I was just wondering, if Emma accidentally made too much food, could I cut him off. No, Greg sighed dramatically. But Liam? No, Greg slumped in his chair. You are the worst, Emma giggled, clearly amused. And I just shook my head, knowing Greg was never leaving my life. After dinner, as the family slowly started leaving, I found Liam in the kitchen, helping clean up. I wrapped my arms around his waist, pressing a kiss between his shoulder blades. Tonight was perfect, I whispered. Liam turned, pulling me into his arms. You're perfect, I smiled. So, I love you, he tilted my chin up. Dance with me, I laughed. Again, he smirked. Always, so we danced. Right there in our warm, messy kitchen, and as he held me close, whispering promises of forever. Chapter 10. I always knew life with Liam wouldn't be quiet, but I never expected the past to come hunting us down. It started with a phone call. One I shouldn't have answered. Hello? Silence. Then a voice I didn't recognize. Enjoy your happy little life while you can, Mrs. Sinclair. My blood ran cold. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? The line went dead. I turned, heart pounding, and saw Liam walking in, loosening his tie. He immediately noticed my face. Sweetheart? I swallowed hard. Something's wrong. There were very few things in this world that truly terrified me. But seeing Emma pale, shaken, gripping her phone like it had delivered a death sentence, that did it. I crossed the room in 2 steps, cupping her face. What happened? She held out her phone. A call. A warning. Someone is watching us, Liam. My chest tightened. I took the phone, scanning the caller ID. Blocked number. Whoever this was, they were careful. But not careful enough. Because now, they had my full attention, and my rage. Liam's entire demeanor changed. His grip on my phone tightened, his eyes turning cold, calculating. "I'll handle it," he said, voice low and lethal. I grabbed his arm. "Liam, this isn't just business. This is our family." His jaw clenched. Exactly. A shiver ran down my spine. Because when Liam got like this, someone was going to regret it. I wasted no time. Within an hour, my team was digging through every security feed, tracking the call, looking for any sign of who dared threaten my family. And when the report landed on my desk, my blood went cold. The caller wasn't just some random threat. It was someone from my past, someone I thought I had buried long ago. And now they were back. And they weren't coming for me. They were coming for Emma. That night, Liam didn't sleep. I watched him from across the room, his muscles tense, his phone constantly buzzing. I walked over, slipping into his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. His grip on my waist tightened. "You don't have to do this alone," I whispered. He exhaled, pressing his forehead against mine. "Emma, if anything ever happened to you," I cupped his face, "nothing will." He closed his eyes, breathing me in. Then, with slow, deliberate certainty, he kissed me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise, a vow, to protect me, to destroy anyone who dared touch what was his. And I knew, whatever storm was coming, Liam would burn the world down before he let it touch me. Chapter 11. I woke up to the sound of shattered glass. My heart lunged into my throat. I shot up in bed, disoriented, pulse pounding. Then I felt it, Liam's absence. The bed was empty. The house was silent. Too silent. And that's when I knew something was terribly wrong. I threw on a robe, barefoot, rushing toward the noise. And what I saw made my blood run cold. I was already awake when they came. Because I had been waiting, the moment I heard the sound of a window breaking, my instincts kicked in. I grabbed my gun, moving silently through the house. The security alarms had been disabled. Whoever this was, they were skilled, but they weren't expecting me. I caught the first intruder in the hallway, a masked man, gun raised. He saw me too late. 1 second he was breathing, the next he wasn't. I didn't hesitate. This was my home, my family, and no one walked in here without paying the price. I saw the body before I saw Liam. A man unmoving, crumpled on the floor. And Liam? Liam was standing over him, cold, lethal, the gun in his hand still smoking. My breath hitched. "Liam," I whispered. His head snapped up. The moment his eyes met mine, something shifted. He strode toward me, grabbing my face, checking me over. "You're okay," he murmured, almost like he needed to convince himself. I swallowed hard. "What's happening?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled me against his chest, his grip unyielding. Then, in a voice I had never heard before, one raw, feral, and filled with pure, unfiltered rage, he whispered, "They just made the worst mistake of their lives. I had one goal. Get Emma and the kids to safety. Because I wasn't just going to end this threat. I was going to hunt them down, and when I found them, I was going to destroy them. But first, I had to make sure she was safe." I grabbed Emma's wrist, pulling her toward the panic room hidden behind my office. She resisted. "Liam, I'm not just—" I cut her off. "Emma, you're not arguing with me right now." Her jaw clenched. "Liam," I cupped her face, my voice soft but absolute. "I need you to keep our children safe. Please, sweetheart, let me handle this." Her eyes flickered with emotion. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded. I kissed her deeply, desperately, like I was afraid I wouldn't get the chance again. Then, with one last lingering look, I locked the door behind her and turned back toward war. The second the door sealed, I knew. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ethan sat beside me, his little hands clutching my arm. "Mom?" His voice was small, scared. I smoothed his hair back. "It's okay, sweetheart." He swallowed hard. "Is Dad gonna be okay?" I forced a smile. "Your dad is the strongest man I know. But in my chest, I wasn't just worried. I was terrified. Because something told me this was just the beginning. Chapter 12. The second I stepped out of my office, another shot rang out. I ducked, rolling behind the marble counter, scanning the shadows. 4. There were at least 4 more men in the house. They came prepared. They thought I'd be outnumbered. They thought I'd be an easy target. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't just a billionaire. I was a man willing to burn the world down for my family. Ethan was clutching my hand so tightly it hurt. Sophia, still a baby, slept peacefully in the crib inside the panic room. And me? I was boiling. I wasn't some helpless damsel. I wasn't going to just sit here while my husband fought alone. I pulled Ethan close, cupping his face. "Sweetheart," I whispered, my voice calm despite the storm in my chest. "I need you to stay here and protect your sister. Okay?" His big eyes searched mine. "But Mom," I pressed a kiss to his forehead. "It'll come back. I promise." Then, before I could second-guess myself, I grabbed the spare gun Liam had left in the room and slipped out. I took the first 2 men down quickly, a shot to the knee, a knife to the throat. They didn't deserve a second chance. The third one? He was smarter. He charged me head-on, swinging a knife, aiming for my ribs. I dodged, barely. But then, a gunshot echoed from behind him. He stiffened, then collapsed, and standing in the hallway, gripping a gun with shaking hands, was Emma. I couldn't breathe. I had never shot anyone before. My hands were trembling. My chest was heaving. But the moment that man had raised his weapon toward Liam, I had pulled the trigger without thinking. Liam was staring at me, his expression unreadable. Then, before I could process it, he was in front of me, grabbing my face, pressing his forehead against mine. "You shouldn't have left the panic room," he growled. I let out a shaky breath. "I wasn't letting you fight alone." His grip tightened. "You could have been hurt," I swallowed. "So could you." For a long moment we just stood there. Then he pulled me against his chest, crushing me in his arms. And despite the chaos, despite the blood, despite everything, I felt safe. I didn't get to hold her long. Because the second I turned my head, I saw it. A figure in the doorway, a face I never expected to see again. And suddenly, everything made sense. The betrayal, the attack, who was behind it all. And when they smirked, tilting their head, eyes filled with something dark and twisted, I knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 13, Liam. I should have known. I should have expected this. But seeing him standing in my home, smirking like he hadn't just ordered men to kill me, it took everything in me not to put a bullet between his eyes. "Hello, Sinclair," he drawled, stepping forward, casually adjusting his suit. Emma tensed beside me. I tightened my grip on her, shielding her with my body. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me why you're here before I end you," I growled. He laughed. Like this was all a game. "Come on, Liam," he smirked. "Is that any way to greet family?" Emma stiffened. I felt my pulse spike, because I knew that smirk, I knew that voice, and I knew this wasn't just an attack, this was personal. Liam's entire body went rigid, like he was holding back something lethal. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the gun in my hand, because the man standing in front of us, he wasn't some random enemy. He was family, or at least he used to be. "Daniel," Liam said, voice low, dangerous. The man tilted his head. "You still say my name like it's poison." Liam's jaw clenched. "It is." I looked between them, trying to piece it together. Liam had never spoken about his extended family, at least not much. But this man, this Daniel, I could see it in Liam's eyes. He wasn't just someone from the past. He was someone who had once been trusted. And now, he was the one holding the knife. The last time I had seen Daniel Sinclair, he was walking away. A traitor. He had betrayed the family, stolen, lied. And now, he was back. Not just for me, but for Emma, for our children. I took a step forward, rage simmering beneath my skin. "You're a dead man," I said coldly. Daniel just smiled. "Oh, cousin," he murmured. "You always did have a temper." Emma gripped my arm. She wasn't telling me to stop. She wasn't telling me to be careful. She was telling me I wasn't alone, and I wasn't, not anymore. Daniel tilted his head. "You really love her, don't you?" Liam's jaw flexed. "She's my life." Daniel smiled. "Then you're going to want to listen to what I have to say." Liam stilled. Because Daniel wasn't just here to threaten us, he was here to offer a deal. And whatever it was, I knew. It would change everything. Chapter 14. Daniel smirked, stepping further into my home like he hadn't just sent men to kill me, like he wasn't a dead man walking. "You have something I want, cousin," he said smoothly. I narrowed my eyes. "You lost any right to demand anything the day you betrayed this family." Daniel sighed, shaking his head like I was disappointing him. "Still so dramatic," he mused. "I'm offering you a choice, Liam, a way out of this mess, a way to keep your precious family safe." Beside me, Emma stiffened. I felt her heartbeat quicken, her fingers subtly curling around the grip of her gun. She was ready, but I didn't want her anywhere near this. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. Say what you came here to say before I put a bullet in your head. Daniel chuckled. Then, with calm precision, he slid a folder onto my desk. And the moment I opened it, the world tilted. I had never seen Liam react like that, not when we were in danger, not when men had attacked us, but whatever was in that folder, it was bad. Liam's jaw clenched, his fingers curling into a fist as he read. Then, slowly, he looked up, and the fury in his eyes chilled me to my core. You bastard, he growled. Daniel grinned. I know. I stepped forward. Liam, what is it? Daniel tilted his head. Oh, don't worry, Mrs. Sinclair. Your husband's just realizing that the world isn't as black and white as he thought. Liam slammed the folder shut. You think this will make me bow to you? That I'll let you walk out of here alive? Daniel shrugged. I think you'll listen to my terms. Liam's chest rose and fell heavily. His entire body was coiled tight, lethal, dangerous. I reached for him, pressing my palm against his back, grounding him. He was on the edge. I could feel it, but I wouldn't let him fall. Not alone. Daniel's offer was simple. Hand over control of Sinclair Industries, step away from power, and in return, he wouldn't touch Emma or the kids. It was a trap. A sick, twisted power play. And the worst part? He thought I'd actually consider it. I looked up at him, cold and calculating. Then I laughed, because Daniel had one very fatal mistake. He thought he could negotiate with me. Liam's laugh sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't light, it wasn't amused, it was deadly, like he had already decided Daniel's fate. Liam set the folder down, slowly rolling his shoulders. Then, with calm precision, he pulled his gun from his holster and leveled it directly at Daniel's chest. Daniel barely flinched. Oh, cousin, he murmured, mocking. Is that any way to handle business? Liam cocked the gun. This isn't business. And for the first time, Daniel's smirk faltered, because he finally realized Liam wasn't playing. Daniel thought he could walk into my home, threaten my wife, and get away with it. He thought I'd hand over everything I built. He thought wrong. I stepped closer, the barrel of my gun mere inches from his heart. Last chance, I murmured. You leave, you disappear, or I end this now. Daniel exhaled slowly. You'd kill your own blood? I didn't blink. You stopped being family the second you became a traitor. He studied me, measuring, calculating. Then he smirked. See you soon, cousin. And just like that, he turned and walked out. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Liam didn't move for a long time. He stood rigid, still holding the gun, his breathing slow and even, like he was trying to contain a storm. I walked over, placing my hands on his chest. Liam, I whispered, his muscles tensed beneath my touch. Then he exhaled, dropping his forehead against mine. He's not done, Liam murmured. This was just the warning. I swallowed hard. Then we fight. His grip tightened on me, and the look in his eyes, pure, unwavering devotion. He kissed me, slow and deep like he was memorizing me. Then he pulled back, his voice low and lethal. If he wants war, sweetheart, Liam whispered, we'll give him one. Chapter 15. The night was too quiet. The kind of silence that meant something was coming. I stood by the window, staring at the city skyline, my heart pounding in my chest. Liam had been preparing for this moment all week, reinforcing security, gathering his men, making calls I wasn't allowed to hear, because we both knew Daniel wasn't done. And when he came, we would be ready. I sat in my office, gun in my lap, waiting. I knew Daniel's playbook. He was too arrogant to stay in the shadows. He wanted a show. And tonight, he was going to get one hell of a finale, because I wasn't just going to end this war. I was going to erase him from existence. The first gunshot shattered the night, then another and another. The house erupted in chaos, security shouting orders, glass shattering. And through it all, Liam was already moving, gun in hand, expression cold, deadly. He turned to me just before he left the room. Stay here, he said firmly. I grabbed his wrist. Liam, his eyes softened, just barely. Then without another word, he kissed me. Hard, fierce, like it was the last time. And then, he was gone. I took the first man down in seconds, a bullet to the knee, followed by a swift strike to the temple. He dropped. But there were more. Daniel had sent an army, and I was going to tear through every last one of them. I heard footsteps, closer, too close, and suddenly, the door burst open. A man stood there, gun raised, and before he could even react, I pulled the trigger. Once, twice. He collapsed. I took a shaky breath, my heart racing, and that's when I knew I wasn't just waiting for Liam anymore. I was fighting too, because this was our home, our family, and I would protect it with everything I had. I found him. Daniel, standing in the courtyard, waiting, like this was some game. He smiled. "Took you long enough, cousin. I raised my gun. Last chance, walk away." Daniel laughed. Then he pulled out his own gun and aimed it at Emma. I barely had time to register what was happening. 1 second, I was standing by the stairs. The next, Daniel's gun was pointed at me. Liam moved before I could react, and suddenly a gunshot split the air. But it wasn't mine, and it wasn't Daniel's. It was Liam's. And Daniel was falling. I watched as my cousin collapsed. The gun slipped from his fingers. His breathing was ragged, shallow. He looked up at me, his smirk finally gone. "You," he coughed, blood on his lips. "You really did it." I stared down at him, expression blank. Then finally, I spoke. "No more second chances." And just like that, it was over. The moment the gunfire stopped, I was running, straight into Liam's arms. He caught me, crushing me against his chest, his heart pounding. I buried my face in his shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. I clung to him, tears slipping down my cheeks. We had survived, and for the first time in weeks, we were free. I pulled Emma closer, breathing her in. This woman, my wife, my everything. I tilted her chin up, kissing her softly, and then against her lips I whispered, "Let's go home." Because now, the war was over, and our forever was just beginning. Chapter 16, I woke up to soft kisses trailing down my neck. Liam's arms were wrapped around me, his bare chest warm against my back. I smiled sleepily. "You're up early," he murmured against my skin. I never went to sleep. I turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. "Why?" He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his blue eyes filled with something deep, endless. "Because I wanted to memorize this," he whispered. I laughed softly. "Memorize what?" He leaned closer, brushing his lips over mine. "This," he said, his voice full of love. Waking up next to my wife, safe, at peace, knowing we made it. I cupped his face, my heart swelling. "We did," I whispered. And then, just like every morning, he kissed me. Soft, slow, like we had all the time in the world. Because we did. We finally did. It had been 6 months since the war ended. 6 months of peace. No threats, no guns, no looking over my shoulder. Just Emma, Ethan, Sophia, and a home filled with love. I never thought I'd be the man who wanted a quiet life. But here I was, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sophia giggled, clapping her tiny hands as Ethan chased her around the living room. Liam and I sat on the couch, watching them, his arm lazily draped over my shoulders. Ethan suddenly paused, looking up at us. "Dad?" Liam smirked. "Yeah, buddy." Ethan tilted his head. "Are you and Mom going to have another baby?" I choked on my tea. "Liam?" Liam just grinned. "Would you like that?" he asked, amused. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, but this time, make it a brother." I laughed, shaking my head. "Liam, don't encourage him." Liam wrapped his arms around me, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Sweetheart," he murmured, his voice low and full of promise. "We do make beautiful babies." I elbowed him playfully. "Liam Sinclair," Ethan giggled. "Dad, stop being gross." Liam just chuckled, pulling me closer. And in that moment, watching our children, feeling Liam's arms around me, knowing we had built something real, unshakable, I knew this was forever. That night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled Emma into our bed, my lips brushing against her ear. "You know I love you, right?" I whispered. She smiled softly. "I know." I cupped her face, staring into the eyes of the woman who had changed my life. "My forever started the day I met you," I murmured. Her breath hitched, and then, with nothing but love between us, I kissed her. Slow, deep, like it was the first time, and the last time, and every time in between, because she was mine and I was hers. Forever. Chapter 16. The kitchen was a mess. Sophia was sitting on the counter, covered in flour. Ethan was attempting to crack eggs, failing miserably. And me? I was laughing, completely in love with this chaotic, beautiful life. And then, Liam walked in, dressed in his expensive suit, looking like he owned the world. But the second he saw the mess, he froze. "Sweetheart," he said slowly. "What happened?" I grinned. "We're baking." Liam arched an eyebrow. "Or destroying my kitchen?" Ethan piped up. "We're making cookies for Mom's special surprise." Liam paused. His gaze flickered to me. I felt my heartbeat pick up, because I hadn't told him yet. Hadn't found the right moment to say, "I'm pregnant." The words knocked the air out of my lungs. For a moment I just stared at her. Then, a slow, pure, disbelieving grin spread across my face. "Say it again," I whispered. Emma laughed. "Liam?" I grabbed her by the waist, lifting her off the ground, spinning her. She squealed, laughing. Ethan cheered. Does this mean I get a brother? Sophia clapped. Baby! I set Emma down, cupping her face. You're pregnant, I whispered. She nodded, her eyes shining. We're having another baby. And just like that, I kissed her, right there in the middle of the flour-covered kitchen, with our kids cheering, laughing, throwing cookie dough. And my heart was full. Chapter 18, I was breathing through the pain, gripping Liam's hand, trying not to kill him. Sweetheart, just breathe, Liam murmured, his lips against my forehead. I glared at him. Liam, if you tell me to breathe one more time... The contraction hit. I crushed his fingers. Liam winced. Okay, breathing is optional. Greg, who had somehow inserted himself into this entire process, stood in the corner, visibly panicking. Liam, Greg whispered, I am not equipped for this. Liam shot him a look. Greg, why are you even here? Greg threw up his hands. You told me to drive Emma to the hospital. Now I can't unsee things, Emma groaned. Both of you. Shut up. Liam immediately went silent. Greg did not. I just want to say, he whispered, this is terrifying, but also, Emma, you are so much stronger than Liam. Liam sighed. Greg, get out. Greg smirked. Nope, I am invested now. The second I heard our baby's cry, the world stopped. The doctor smiled. It's a boy. Emma let out a soft, exhausted laugh. Ethan had gotten his wish. I leaned down, pressing my forehead to Emma's. You did it, sweetheart, I whispered. She smiled, her eyes shining. We did it, and when they placed our son in her arms, I knew there was nothing in this world more perfect. Liam held our baby, softer than I'd ever seen him, his big hands cradling such a tiny little boy. Ethan peeked over. Dad, he's so small, Sophia giggled. Baby brother. And Greg sniffled dramatically. Liam glared. Greg, are you crying? Greg wiped his eyes. Shut up, Sinclair. This is beautiful. Emma laughed. Greg, do you want to be the godfather? Greg gasped. Liam groaned. Emma, no. Greg collapsed onto the hospital couch. I need a moment. Later that night, when it was just us, I sat on the hospital bed beside Emma, our newborn son asleep in her arms. I ran a finger over his tiny hand. Do you want to name him? Emma asked softly. I swallowed, my throat tight. Let's name him after my father, I murmured. Emma smiled. Then she whispered, Noah. And just like that, it was decided. The house was never quiet anymore. 3 kids, a loving, chaotic family, and somehow Greg was still here. All right, listen up, tiny humans, Greg announced, holding up a cookie. Whoever beats me in Mario Kart gets this. Ethan smirked. You're going down, Uncle Greg. Sophia nodded. Crush him, Ethan, little Noah giggled, clapping his hands. Emma sat beside me, laughing softly. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. You happy, sweetheart? I murmured. She smiled, leaning into me, happier than I ever dreamed. I kissed her slowly, deeply, because after everything, after every battle, every fight, every war, we had found our forever, and I would never let it go. The end. Written by Maria. Thank you all for taking the time to dive into this story with me. I truly appreciate your support and love hearing your thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey filled with passion, drama, and unexpected twists, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. There's so much more to come, and I can't wait to share it all with you. Stay tuned for more incredible stories, and as always, thank you for being part of this amazing journey. See you in the next one.